I'm investigative journalist Molly Barrows. For years, I've covered the stories that made headlines in Northwest Florida and all along the Gulf Coast. Murders, missing persons, and mysteries of all kinds. These cases are far from over for many victims because the full story has yet to surface. Join me for Gulf Coast Confidential, where I dive into the saltier side of the South and expose the lies, greed, and corruption that often weighs down the truth. It's time to turn the tide and get a shot at justice. Hey y'all, I'm Molly Barrows, and welcome to the Gulf Coast Confidential podcast, where we cover some of the most scandalous crimes and cases that bubble up in Northwest Florida and beyond. Joining me as always to talk about these what the feezy cases is Pam Hill. She's a pharmacist and an advocate for victims. She's experienced violent crime in her own family, so she brings a unique and valuable perspective to a lot of these crazy cases that we talk about. And this is another one. This episode is called A Murderous Third Grader, Deadly Paramour, and a Missing Husband Buried in the Backyard. Laurie Shaver's Blame Game.
Lord have mercy.
I know. All these crazy things happening around this woman, and none of it's her fault, Pam.
Never
That's what
is.
she says.
We're going to see who we're going to blame today.
That's right. I know. So this is another trial that just recently happened, just this month, and it's September. Laurie Shaver was tried for killing her estranged husband. She's 41. He's 36-year-old Michael Shaver. Police believe she shot him in the back of the head in November of 2015. 2015, y'all. Mm-hmm. This one's been walking around out on bond for what? Coming up on 10 years almost.
Yeah, 10 years looking for him, then the bond, and she's just been footloose and fancy-free.
Yeah, and even pretended that he was alive for 3 years. So it took a while for, I guess, police to even know that there was a problemo. But prosecutors argued that she buried his remains in the backyard of their Claremont home and then impersonated him in texts and Facebook messages to create the impression that he was still alive. We're talking about Claremont, Florida. It's a bedroom community of Orlando, if you will. I had to look it up. Tavares is how they initially described it. I was like, Tavares just rolls right off the tongue, but I don't know where the heck that is in the beautiful sunshine
Good
state of
old
Florida.
Central Florida. That's where my nephew lives, in Claremont.
Very nice. So yeah, this is a crazy story. So this lady had more than one boyfriend. This was another one of those open relationships, and she tried to say that he was abusive because he was unhappy with, I guess, a new love that she had found.
Yeah. I don't know that it's open on his side. I think on this little heifer Jezebel side it is. It's like raining men, and lots of them's ugly, but some of them ain't.
She really liked the one that wasn't, apparently.
Yeah, she liked
Got a little tattoo of his first initial above her hoo-ha.
Yes, she did. And that scared him. But we'll talk about that later. She reminds me of, she thinks she's a Mary Lou Henner, you know, a stunner, and off a Taxi. Well, she got kind of reddish hair or something, but she sits in that courtroom and throws her shoulders back and put her neck on swivel and keeps her arm and her purse beside her. And her defense attorney, her attorney, is just this goofy ass guy, you know, and he's kind of icky and bothersome, prickly like a cactus. I mean, I watched this whole trial and stayed aggravated the whole time, basically, at both of them. But she'd be leaning over onto him like this, like she's co-counsel in his ear and stuff. Now, keep in mind, she got men everywhere.
Men's galore.
Everywhere. So she's leaning on him, and he's up there, you know, asking his questions and stuff and being smarty pants to everybody. And he'll turn around to her and go back and consult with her. I'm like, what is wrong with you?
She whispering sweet nothings in his ear as
well.
well.
I think so. That might be, I don't know. That might be, never mind.
I know, it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder when somebody's trying to be all femme fatale.
Yeah.
Some men, it doesn't take much. Just the slightest whiff of a maybe.
Well,
that's enough for them.
I think this ain't nothing he ever had before, so.
Wow. Well, it seems like a lot of her dirty laundry got aired in this trial. And like you said, she was going to present one image as if she's above it all and falsely accused and had nothing to do and trying to be the victim. But this is another situation where the jury wasn't buying it. And it was just so disturbing how she pretended to be her estranged husband for so long, was on Facebook, was on text messages. She even went and told his boss, because he worked at Disney World as a mechanic, and said, he's quitting. He's, you know, I'm quitting. I'm moving to Georgia, quote unquote, everybody else leave me alone. Like, you know, bless his heart. I guess he didn't have that many good friends for nobody to really know he was gone for as long as it was.
I think some people don't. If somebody doesn't hear from me in a day, and I'm so habitual, people would know. Especially my family would know.
Yeah.
But some people have a lot of autonomy and they're not necessarily, socialing it up with everybody and everything. But he was well liked at his work. He was dependable. This isn't the way he would talk, saying something, oh, I quit or you fire me or whatever. I'm leaving everything. He was a mechanic on the monorail, like a technician. He had thousands, probably tens of thousands of dollars worth of tools. He had a car, his personal sundries and stuff, his keys, glasses, medicine, everything. So was just left at the house. So he didn't just pick up and leave like that. Because he said in her writings, I'm going to work on my marriage. Well, that's not how you work on your marriage. Quit your job where you have no money and then run away.
Yeah.
But she just was diabolical like this because what happened there was, of course, there was a little bit of domestic violence back and forth with them. But once again, just like with Sarah Boone, this man was battered too, but they never, ever, ever tell that. And so she just was so used to playing the femme fatale that she thought everybody believed her. Well, her 7-year-old daughter had believed her, and she had talked so much trash, I guess, about the dad that the little girl basically was brainwashed and like Munchausen's by, just keeping on brainwashing.
Poor little thing.
I know. And then so she ran like her mom. This trial was going to be called My Daughter Did It trial. My 7-year-old daughter did it.
Yeah, she did try. That was one of 2 defenses that she was trying to push.
Right. And then the second defense came along and said, my 7-year-old daughter and my paramour, who looks like Aquaman, did it.
I know. That's so crazy because she was eventually charged with second-degree murder and accessory after the fact. This was in September of 2020. She was out on bond, like we said, awaiting trial. And they had been living together, but supposedly were dating other people, at least according to her. And some of the evidence that Laurie did present, her defense team, like what you talked about, years, they said, of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. And I guess at some point, somebody had enough and shot him in the back of the head, but nobody reported it to the police. And again, she's the one that pretended to be him. And so when they did go finally looking for his body, they did find it 3 feet underground below a concrete slab. And this was in March of 2018. And it was underneath this concrete slab at a fire pit that Laurie had put in and installed a year after he died, basically. Now that they know he was dead, but it would have been a year after he, quote unquote, disappeared. So that's interesting. And then didn't you say she remarried?
Yeah, she remarried. Let me just do some dates for you here, okay?
Okay, sure.
All right. Michael vanished in November of 2015. And February 16th, 2018, his little buddy, Scott Amatuccio, it sounded like he'd be a cool guy.
Yes.
Said, hey, somebody do a welfare check. I ain't seen my buddy in a long time. So the police went out there and they looked around. It's a big acreage that they have, that they said they had over 400 birds and they have pigs and other animals and stuff out there. And they had originally going to build a duck pond out there. Anytime anybody starts digging in a yard, everybody needs to look. You know, I mean, we've done so many cases about that. And so by that time, there's no cell phone for Michael. There's no phone. There's no clothes. The passport's gone. So they're out there and they go, you know what? We're going to run some cadaver dogs through here. And she's like, oh, no, you're not. That's when she was cooperative till then. So then they went back and ran cadaver dogs through, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But on April 2016, because he's been vanished for, half a year, she starts dating this guy named Travis Filmer. And so they're the ones that put out the concrete and the fire pit out there. And they even drew some hearts like you do in the first grade or kindergarten. It put their initials on there.
That's so immature.
Well, I guess this is how killers do. I don't know.
But just crazy women.
Right, exactly. And then, down in 2015 is where he said, fire me. And so there were some loans that were taken out in his name during 2015 and 16.
That's cold.
2016 is when the fire pit and the concrete love heart got built. And then let's see, around that time, she's seeing Travis, and that's when the man that looks like a wannabe Fabio named Jeremy.
Yes.
The one, or they call him Jay, the initials and the tattoo she got in a very private place.
Right.
So then she's doing all that. But not only is she pretending just like she's Michael, what she does, Jeremy's got a wife. She said that the way she told this story, she said, Jeremy took his car line. All right, this is crazy in the car line. I was in car line and Jeremy saw me. He saw my battered face and he gave me a little note like this that I see you, Jeremy, and his phone number, meaning I see you're bruised and everything, like I'm, a white knight. So of course she calls him back. Well, they start being paramours, okay? So all that's going on in 2016. Well, she said, my life ain't chaotic enough. Let me do something. So she sends Jeremy's wife some flowers, beautiful flowers, and sends a note. Let me read you what was on the note.
Please.
Okay. This is ugly, okay? Say, roses are red, violets are blue. My wife's a whore, your husband is too. I'm sorry about this. Check your Facebook messages, Mike.
What was the point of all that?
She's acting like her husband's sending that to Vanessa, like, my wife's cheating with your husband.
So it's her way of trying to stir the pot and let the other woman, let the woman know the other woman's in the picture.
Right. And she stirred it hard because there were 600 pages, not text, pages of text between her and this woman. And this woman wasn't going back and forth. She's basically like, I'm not answering. Who's that psycho?
Right.
She didn't see it till later. And thank goodness she didn't engage.
Amen.
Or whatever. But during that time, that's when she got that tattoo. And I think Aquaman said, that's scary. Let me out of here. Because she's blaming him for the shot too.
Yeah, that was going to talk a little bit about that. According to these documents in court, their two children, she said, witnessed much of this physical abuse, allegedly, including the incident on the day that supposedly he was last seen alive. That was her original story that led the daughter to kill her. And that was, at first that was their claim. She's third grade, pulled the trigger, shot him in the back of the head during this violent episode to protect her mom. And her daughter, now 15 or 16, she testified at the trial too, saying that her mom is, quote unquote, her best friend. Mm-hmm. And she testified that, quote, and I grabbed her gun and I went back out and I went to the door was already open, and he had my mom on the ground, still lying on the ground, still kicking her, and I shot him, end quote. So that wasn't enough. The defense had to give a different story, though. In their opening statement, they presented a different theory that pointed the blame away from Laurie and the daughter, and like you were talking about with Jeremy, or Jay, as he's noted on her body. Yeah. The defense suggested that during the argument that led to Michael's death, Laurie's lover took the gun from her daughter, shot Michael, and buried his body. And Laurie basically later alleged that it was that boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend, Jeremy Townsend, who walked over and shot Michael a second time to make sure that he was dead. And so anyway, she accused him of disposing of Michael's body while she was taking the kids to school. But Laurie and Townsend and her daughter all took the stand, and Townsend was like, nuh-uh, I never met Michael. I was not around for his death, quote unquote. I did not know who Mike was, end quote, Townsend told the court. So he rejected all these claims. He said, that they were lying. He had nothing to do with that. But it doesn't surprise me. It sounds like she must have had a pretty big thing for him, trying to drag him into it.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously with a tattoo, but then sending his wife. What an evil lady.
Oh, yeah. She had all kind of men. She even had one man in there. He was just like a biggin, and just old country biggin. And he's up there testifying, and he's like, stepped out on my old lady and stuff like that. And I'm like, I hate when people do that. When they say my old lady or my old man, I'm like, just so
sounds
tacky.
Crass.
It's tacky. But anyway, I watched them all testify. You couldn't see the little girl, but you could hear her when she's up on the stand. And you could tell she was measured and she knew. And when Jeffrey Wigg is Laurie's attorney, when Jeffrey Wigg was up there questioning her or something, she slipped and called him Jeff, And so the prosecutor was like, oh, so you call him Jeff? Well, no. Okay. So anyway, that goes on. The little girl's up there, and she's telling the story that that she's getting beaten, that Michael has his foot and boot on the side of her mother's face, twisting it and kicking her in the stomach at the same time, And so because they're saying he was mad because she was pregnant with Jeremy's baby. It just doesn't get more General Hospital than that,
Right.
Just all this crazy stuff. So she's watching all that. And she said she goes to get her mom's gun. And she said, I shoot And they said, where? She said, at the head, but I don't know where it went. But so then she says that Jeremy comes in like a white knight, comes in and he takes the gun from her and tells Laurie, crawls away, she says, take the kids to school. And if y'all tell anybody, I'll kill y'all. I'll do the same thing to you. Basically, I got this.
Doesn't even sound believable.
And why would you take your kids to school and they didn't tell anybody?
No.
You know, because then they had a teacher up on the stand too. And this teacher just did everything right for teachers that day. Jeffrey Wigg, the smart-ass attorney of hers, you know, he's over there going, well, I don't really need to know what you do and stuff. And she looked right at him and said, you need to care what I do. I am a teacher. Like that. And I was like, yes, both my sisters are teachers. And I quit talking to people like that.
Absolutely.
You know?
Good for her.
Yeah. So she's like, nah, I ain't an exceptional little kid or nothing different. She's a kid, you know? And so all this is coming, it cannot be, only people that can verify what they're doing is each other. So it sounds just like the little mommy talking, like a puppet master.
It does.
You know?
I thought it was interesting. I read in one of the accounts of the trial where they said the jurors had a hard time even making eye contact or looking over at her because there were times when she was struggling to explain some of the details or having a hard time remembering, including why she said the shooting happened in May instead of November. So 6 months later, Laurie also apparently had trouble recounting her husband's whereabouts during that 6-month gap. So anyway, it's interesting to me that little girl was even dragged into it. That's another thing that's just awful on that mom's part.
Well, the mom said she wants to. They all said she wants to. They even had to get her, you know, we have guardian ad litems. She had an attorney ad litem, you know, someone to represent her. And so she's up there, and one of her sentences was, and I shot him. Okay, that's what she said.
Right, she could have ended up being charged.
Yes, she can. And so when Jeremy was up there, he basically was like, no, man. He was cool. And I listened to all the body language experts. You know, they'd ask him a question. He said, no. And, you know, we all kind of fluff our words around sometimes, but just FYI, if you really want to be believed, just say yes or no.
Yes.
You know, so yes.
Yes.
So anyway, he said, no. And then they wanted a little more information from him. He said, look, friends with bennies, basically. You know, I go over there at lunchtime, like a nooner type thing, you know, and I'm sitting there going, he's just so casual about it.
Yeah,
but
it's believable.
Right. But the girl and the mommy, Laurie, said he was over here all the time. Him and his son came over to go to school with us. And my mom and him would basically drop us off and then they'd go to the park or whatever. I think he's a landscaper or something like that. He may have had a lot of autonomy himself according to their story, you know, but he's not the one being questioned. But it just kept on and on and on. And, you know, she kept harassing him going, take your wedding ring off. This man is having an affair with her. It's obvious he doesn't want to be with her that way. But she did not take 1 second. Folks cheating out there, folks ain't going to take 1 second blaming you on stuff.
No,
you know?
it's clearly not a love relationship. It's using, and then things went awry and she had no trouble pointing the finger at him, trying to get him to be the fall guy. Well, and it sounds like the jury certainly didn't believe it. They ended up convicting her of second-degree murder. They deliberated for actually less than 4 hours, so it wasn't a huge debate, it doesn't sound like.
It wasn't, and they were not believing any of that. And I think they were kind of like me. I was watching her, and I just stayed so kind of like, what's going on over there? You're not a sympathetic witness, or you're not a sympathetic defendant. You know, I think all that matters when you're there. And the judge was very fair about things. But for the daughter, I don't understand why a mother would let a daughter get up there and say, I did it. No. Even if they did do it, I'd say, be quiet.
She just so selfish. That's the way it comes across to me, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. And so they kept asking her when she'd be out of court, how'd it go today? And she goes, I just want to tell my story. Well, that's what it is, a story. You know, just a big old lie. And so she was kind of feeling that, you know, you can kind of feel the tension on stuff. And so she had come out, her verdicts came out on Friday the 13th, this last Friday. And it just seems like when they go to deliberate on a Friday, it seems like you're going to get a verdict on Friday.
Right. Everybody wants to go home.
That's right. They don't want to be over the weekend thinking about all that crazy stuff. So, you know, she basically got her guilty verdict. And it got real for Sister right then, because you could see they came over there, they took her into custody, they ran their hands through her hair, they handcuffed her, they fingerprinted her, and I said to myself, she didn't know that was going to happen this morning. did she?
I know. It is interesting how so many of these trials that we follow and these defendants, they really do, I think, drink their own Kool-Aid. They really live in this fantasy world where what they've put out there must be believed. They're not going to be held responsible.
Right.
And then when they don't get that verdict of not guilty, it all becomes pretty real.
And then, I mean, you think about people, like people that come into your family. She estranged everybody from Michael. And if she didn't do it that way, when they'd come, she'd make them feel uncomfortable or they had known each other since they were in kindergarten. I mean, they had known each other that time, kind of childhood sweethearts. Obviously, a lot of give and take, but she had morphed into this nymphomaniac, I think I'm a sexy siren type of thing. And just her drug of choice was men,
Right.
you know? So she just really had no idea what was going to happen on Friday the 13th.
Well, she knows now.
She knows now. It all got real.
That's right. And she's going to be sentenced on November 25th, and they're going to do a pre-sentence investigation, but she does face up to life in prison. So that'll be interesting to see what they decide to give her if she ends up getting life without parole or life with the possibility of parole.
Right. And rest in peace, Michael, because once again, we didn't get to find out anything about the victim.
No. Well, Pam, anything else you think would be important to add?
No, I just think be careful who you let in your family.
Amen. No doubt. Well, thank you so much. And we appreciate you being on as always. And thank you so much for joining us. That is it for a murderous third grader, deadly paramour, and a missing husband buried in the backyard, Laurie Shaver's blame game. I'm your host, writer, and producer, Molly Barrows, with co-host and researcher, Pam Hill. And a big thanks, as always, to our director, editor, and production engineer, James Roy. Remember, you can listen to more of our Gulf Coast Confidential conversations wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And you can watch right here on the Gulf Coast Confidential YouTube channel. Just don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.